Well, why don't we do a quick round of introductions? There's not many of us. We're filling one screen, it seems to me. Because some of you I don't know, but I'm Gary Sanfason, Boulder County Disaster Recovery. Dale, you want to go next?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Dale Case. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Permitting.
And Kim?
I am Kim Sanchez, and I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Community Planning and Permitting, helping with the rebuilding efforts in our department.
Ron?
Hello, I'm Ron Flax. I'm Deputy Director for Community Planning and Permitting and the Chief Building Official for the county.
Hannah?
Good morning. I'm Hannah Hipley. I'm the Long Range Planning Manager at Boulder County Community Planning and Permitting, also supporting the rebuilding efforts.
Gabby?
I'm Gabby Borkercher with Boulder County, doing communications for you all.
Katie?
Hi, I'm Katie Arrington. Sorry, I was a couple minutes late. I am Gary Sanfason's colleague working in fire recovery to help you all.
So it isn't a good meeting unless the county staff outnumber the number of participants here. So we were close. So, but let's have you introduce yourself, Brian.
Yeah, I'm Brian DeToy from Mountain Ridge 9533. My wife Cheryl and I. She's on another Zoom, and so we're all missing her good questions today. You got me.
Okay. Then David. There's two Davids, so I'll let each one of you go.
David Waugh, architect. We're working on one of the rebuilds for Mountain Ridge.
And David Barrett.
Mr. Barrett.
I'm also an architect, and we had done the master plan for Mountain Ridge 30 years ago, did about 6 of the houses, and are working with Sue and Rob on the new home on their site where they lost theirs.
Great. Sue and Rob?
Yep, we're Rob and Sue, and working with Dave Barrett and Sam at Barrett Studios and residents of Mountain Ridge.
Bob and Dee. Is it Bob Kolb?
Bob Kolb and Lori Kolb, 9638 Mountain Ridge.
Great. Jack?
Yeah, I'm Jack Hanna. I live at 9552, or I used to live at 9552 Mountain Ridge, and I'm not sure what I'm doing.
Great. Jocelyn?
I'm Jocelyn Fankhauser. I'm with Housing and Human Services.
Right. Well, welcome everyone. As I said, we are recording this, and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll make sure we answer them. Today, the focus is on rebuilding, and I just want to make two announcements actually. One, we'll be doing another newsletter shortly. The other announcement is, if you saw, I sent out a webinar notice from United Policyholders. They're having another workshop this Wednesday. It looks like they have been committed to do one every couple of weeks for the next several months. So today we're going to talk about really what some of the, try to help you understand some of the building requirements that are in Boulder County Building Code, primarily Build Smart. So that's why Ron is going to be with us today. And then Kim and Hannah will talk briefly about the pause that's underway, and also, how you can share any needs or desires you have about rebuilding, or who you can talk to about that. So again, this is recorded, and we'll be taking notes, and this is a beginning discussion. So I'll hand it over to Ron.
All right. So I guess just a couple of things right off the bat here. So first of all, I just want to express my my deep sorrow for anyone who has been involuntarily thrust into this process. I can't imagine how disruptive this is, and I'm just thinking about that. It's I recognize how hard this must be. And I also just want to say how difficult it is to sort of communicate in this format. I have talked over the years with hundreds and hundreds of homeowners about building code stuff, and this kind of virtual meeting is not my first choice at all. So, face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact is really hard to do in this format. So, anyway, I just want to express, and I'll say this throughout, but this presentation I have here is really just a very brief, a high-level overview. As many of you get into these projects, myself and my team is eager and happy to provide much more individualized assistance. If you have questions, let us know. We are here to help you with this. All right, so I'm going to try to, let's see, I can't seem to share my screen. Can someone enable, it says host disabled.
Yeah, yes, I will enable you right now. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Hi.
Okay. You should have the ability now.
Let's see. Is that coming up?
Yep, we can see that.
Okay. So, as Gary mentioned, this is really just an overview of some of the Boulder County building codes. The focus was really just on the Build Smart code. That's the part of our local amended codes that often seem to catch people a little bit by surprise, or just different from how other jurisdictions may do it. So I thought it would be useful to go over this and just make sure that everyone's sort of aware of some of these, some of this. So just to, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is just a little bit of the background as to why we have the Build Smart energy codes and why they're quite aggressive compared to what the national codes have been doing, although the national codes have gotten significantly more aggressive recently. But this is just a chart, many of you seen this or something similar to it before, showing greenhouse gas emissions going back quite a few years. And then you can see this sudden spike that takes place with industrialization, with the main gases that seem to be causing climate change and climate disruption. It was looking at these numbers that really was what was motivating the commissioners back in the 2006, I believe, is when they really started talking about this, and all the way up to 2009 when Build Smart really first got rolling. And so that was the motivation here. So here again, just another way to look at a similar kind of data, just showing how the emissions per capita, United States being a top emitter. Again, I don't want to belabor these points, but this is just trying to give a little bit of background as to why our energy codes are as aggressive as they are. Excuse me. So again, this is, sorry, I got a tickle in my throat here. Hang on one second. So this is just showing again the different materials that we worry about in terms of homes and how energy is consumed. We see that there is a fair bit of emissions related to the construction process itself with the cement, but really the big numbers are the energy that's consumed to make electricity, for our transportation, which is the oil, and then also heating our homes with natural gas. As we look at all of Boulder County, we can see that the residential sector is in fact a pretty big contributor to these emissions, which again is why, excuse me, I really have a tickle going here, which is again why we're motivated to create the Build Smart program and why it's such an important piece of how the county as a whole is dealing with climate change. This chart is looking at it A little bit more specifically, this is just the unincorporated areas of Boulder County. Again, just showing that that this residential sector, which is this part right here, this 28%, is a big deal. These numbers we're looking at here are a little bit stale, but nothing really has significantly changed since these numbers came out. So when we talk about new home construction, it's important to be familiar with what we call the HERS index. This is probably the largest tool in our toolbox for regulating residential energy emissions or residential energy construction. It's a pretty straightforward chart. It was created actually by the mortgage industry and the banking industry, trying to properly address housing and the energy consumption of housing in their calculations. And it's the way that the index is defined is that a house that meets a HERS 100 met the baseline 2006 energy code, and a house that uses over the course of an average year averages out to zero energies, meaning that it's producing as much energy as it's consuming over the course of a typical year. That would be considered a HERS 0. This index is the dominant tool that we use to regulate new homes in Boulder County. So this table, it gives just an overview of how the house size ties into what the stringency is. So it's the way that the Boulder County code works. The bigger the house, the more strict the energy code requirements. One of the things that became clear in some of the research that's happened over the years is the fact that we know pretty conclusively that the larger the home, the more energy it consumes. So we try to compensate for that by as the homes get larger, we increase the energy efficiency requirements. Many of the homes in this neighborhood are in these larger categories of, I don't think we have anything that's under 3,500 square feet. Most houses, in fact, seem to be around 5,000 square feet or larger. When you're looking at these numbers, a couple of things to keep in mind is that this is the conditioned floor area. So this is just including the portion of the home that's actually being heated and cooled. Doesn't include unconditioned spaces. As you can look at this chart, again, what we can see is that this ERI path, that is the same thing or synonymous with the HERS score. Not exactly, but that's how to simplify it. ERI and HERS are treated the same, and you can see that you have to choose two, which means that you need to meet the HERS target, and then the dominant secondary pathway is the Energy Star. That's the Energy Star program is a national program. It was started by the EPA. It's supported by the Department of Energy. It's really a program that was intended to try and increase the efficiency of large-scale production home builders. So it's while there's definitely pieces of this that you have to pay attention to, it's not a particularly stringent standard. Again, it was intended to be able to be met by the vast majority of builders throughout the country. And then as we get a little bit bigger, we start to have some additional requirements. So we talk about a HERS score before any photovoltaics or renewable energy are included, of needing a HERS 50, and then you need a HERS 0 with the PV. And then you need this secondary requirement. In this case, the dominant one is the DOE's Zero Energy Ready Home certification. That is a program that evolved out of the Energy Star certification. So it's structured in a lot of ways very similarly, again, trying to be appropriate and achievable for production home building, but it is a little bit more comprehensive than Energy Star. And it definitely does have some pieces in it that have to be paid attention to early in the process. With all of these processes, there are some Additional certifications such as Passive House, LEED, Living Building Challenge, all of those programs can be used to demonstrate code compliance, although many people find that that by the time, you know, we have had buildings that meet that work on all of these requirements, and what they find is that if they're pursuing one of these, then these other requirements typically are very easy to achieve, or already have been achieved. So these are sort of above code programs in that regard. So this chart is probably the most critical piece of this if you're building a house that's below 5,000, and what you can, this is just showing what the HERS score is as the house gets bigger. So you can see that smaller homes have a much more modest HERS target, and then again, as the home gets bigger and bigger, the target gets more and more stringent. There's sort of a magic inflection point that happens right here. Right around a HERS 40 is about as low of a HERS score as you can achieve before renewable energy needs to be added into the mix. So that's just sort of a spot to keep in mind for reference, that this is about as, if you make a really efficient home, you can get just around 40, maybe a couple of points below before you, without PV, and then it starts to require renewable energy. This in some ways, this is probably the most important slide in the deck here, and really this is not my work, but this is a well-established economic perspective on the building process, and really what it's just trying to get to is this idea of, you know, because one of the things that quickly comes up when you talk about these energy efficiency, green building features is, you know, when you add these features, what does that do to the costs? And what it's clear is that it does always raise the first cost a bit, but the difference in the first cost can be all over the map depending upon when you start to really include these features into the thought process behind the design. So if you are really looking at trying to build a very comfortable, energy efficient, high performance home, and if you're starting off your project with that in mind, then the additional costs can be quite modest. If you ignore those things and then try to just sort of add them on to the construction documents towards the end of the project, it can be very expensive. So this is really the motivation in many ways for why I'm talking about this at all today, is just to make sure that people, as you're having some, you know, initial design concept discussions, that you are including these pieces into the puzzle that you know, very often I recommend working with an energy rater or an energy professional right at the very beginning of the process to make sure that you're headed down the right path without creating something that's hard to come back from later. I did want to talk a little bit about the Zero Energy Ready Home program. That's the one that I think there's the market penetration in terms of understanding it is still on the rise. A lot of people are familiar with Energy Star, and it has a really high consumer recognition for products, but maybe a little less so for their home rating system, although it's still people there. But the Zero Energy Ready Home program takes that Energy Star program and adds onto it both Energy Star compliance, also the Indoor Air Plus requirements, and then the EPA Water Sense requirements. So what the Zero Energy Ready Home program is doing is taking advantage of some of these other programs, layering them together, meshing them together, and making it so that you can really get a very high performance home all wrapped up together in a way that covers some of the things that go sort of above and beyond what we think of as traditional minimum building code requirements. The goals of this program are really focused on those things that are easy to sell to consumers. Again, this program was designed as a marketing program for energy, designed by the Department of Energy, but really trying to create something that that the marketplace for production home builders would be able to accept. So this program is really talking about those features in a home that makes the house more healthier, that leads to buildings that last longer, more durable, more comfortable. These are the features of these homes, and it really does capture a lot of little odds and ends that really just make for a better, higher quality home, as opposed to just a home with low energy bills, which it does have. This is just a slide from one of their marketing materials talking about the Indoor Air Plus, just to give you an idea. So you can, I know you can't read it, but there's like these additional checklists that happen in the building process. And so the energy rater, who is registered for the Zero Energy Ready Home program, would inspect for things above and beyond what we think about as traditional energy features. And the reason for that is because if we aren't actually dealing properly with, let's say, flashing and water management details, then those problems can quickly overwhelm some of the energy efficiency that we may have gotten elsewhere. If you have to, tear out materials because things got moisture damage, then from an environmental perspective, that's a very disadvantaged position to be in. So these programs go beyond what the building code does in terms of inspection of these features, and you end up with a much healthier house. There's definitely a lot of details in this, and again, I'm really eager and happy to go over any of these with anyone who wants to talk about them. The Boulder County is blessed with a great many very talented architects and designers that have worked with these programs, and so they're available for help. But I am eager to talk with anyone about that. And with that in mind, here's some of the places where I think some of the most useful information can be found. This top link is a link to the full set of our building codes and handouts. Here's our email and phone number for asking building specific questions. And then the other place that I do often point people to is to the Colorado Green Building Guild. This is an advocacy, environmental advocacy organization, trade group that a lot of the building professionals in the community are aligned with. And if you're having trouble finding someone who can help you with some of these features, that's a great place to go to get a hold of some additional professionals that might be able to help. With that, that's all I had in terms of my prepared remarks. Gary, are there any questions coming through?
Not in the chat, but if you want to stop sharing go back to gallery. Does anyone have any questions? You just feel free to unmute.
Yeah, this is Rob and Sue. We're looking to negotiate with our insurance company on code and cost per square foot rates. Are there any rules of thumb on what the cost per square foot does and increases as you go through this progression?
There has been some work. I think there was a paper, the Rocky Mountain Institute published a paper not too long ago called the Economics of Zero Energy Homes. That would be a place that I might point you to for further information. What I have found just locally in Boulder County is that these numbers are all over the map, depending upon what you're building. We see everything from really high end, very custom homes down to more contractor driven, more economical homes. So the costs, they range really all over the place. One of the first homes in the region that was really documented as a zero energy home was actually built by Habitat for Humanity down in Denver. That was probably about 15 years ago or so. And that was a home that was zero energy with very modest costs. In fact, they were trying to get it down to being at parity for what traditional construction would be. But we also see plenty of houses that are quite a bit more extravagant. So there's a lot of power in terms of what the overall architecture and design and size of the house might be. So it's hard to put a precise number on it, but I would recommend checking out that Rocky Mountain Institute paper to see if they have any way to put some good numbers on that.
Do you have a range, Ron?
You know, I think, you know, just, I mean, if you look at what construction costs are in Boulder County, you know, I haven't seen anyone build any new homes for less than $200 a square foot in quite a while. But I see plenty that look like they're pushing 500 or more dollars a square foot. So it really can be all over the place.
Yeah, what we're trying to get at is the incremental cost of the energy part of it, not the total. Is that roughly $20 per square foot, 50, 100, you know, 0? That's kind of the nature of our question.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think when you're looking at, if you're trying to look at those numbers, I think it really is reasonable to separate out the cost for the house versus the cost for the PV systems. You know, to get a house to a HERS 40, that is a reasonable target for just good construction. And then to get that house down from 40 to the 0 is going to be dominated by the renewable energy system. And so it might be possible to sort of separate out that number. That said, some houses have you know, that need a smaller PV to get that increment, to get that HERS score down. But that some of that depends on like things like the mechanical system. So for instance, we've seen that homes that are moving to all electric or heat pump systems, they respond more quickly to that PV in terms of getting it down. So there's a little bit more bang for the buck there. So, you know, but that's one piece that I think that's easy to sort of pull aside, as opposed to trying to figure out, you know, what's the cost of building a tight house. Again, you know, the details of the structure make a big difference. We've seen, you know, some of the work I've seen recently with like double stud wall construction seems like perhaps it's one of the more affordable solutions. And in fact, I think there was a lead project, affordable housing project in the city of Boulder, where I think they ended up coming up with a double stud wall system as being the most economical. That's a neighborhood that's over on off of Iris, where they did that. But again, you know, there's so many variables that play into it in terms of what those construction costs really are.
So, and Gabby posted that article in the chat.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ron about Build Smart?
I again would encourage, you know, as people are getting involved with the projects themselves, if questions come up, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are more than happy to work with people on an individual basis to help make sure that you understand how to go about this and make sure you're heading down the right path as quickly as possible.
Mr. Barrett, can I put you on the spot?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts go through my head on this. I mean, such conflicting ideas and feelings. On one hand, being totally in line with the nature of our larger responsibility to build toward energy net zero homes and all that. And that's we've been doing that for a long time. On the other hand, you have these circumstances where you started out, Ron, with how we feel about these people and what they've lost. And now when it comes to recreating homes, we certainly want to do better, but I don't see any kind of help from our local community to sort of back up these people. And now we have also Rob and Sue's question of, it's a challenge to say up front, what is the incremental cost to bring us to these targeted HERS ratings that are needed now that the house that they had didn't have? And so the insurance company wants the numbers up front. We have to design the buildings to find out what that cost really is. And so it's chicken and egg. It's a very frustrating process right now in terms of sequence of decisions. And I don't see, I'm interested to see, does the county have anything that they're actually going to help us with here? So far, it's only that these are the requirements. There's no talk about any other way that there's help to people who lose their homes in this and then are out of no fault of their own, they're in this position. And so I don't know if there's any answers. I'm sitting here trying to think, well, what should the county be doing? And I'm not sure what that is. I'm not coming up with the answer. I wish there were some kind of funds, grants or something. Maybe if we're going to live in a warming planet, we have to have a fund available for the inevitable loss of homes to help those who lose their homes. And maybe we need to all be taxed for what's going to happen because we're all creating the circumstances for wildfires in a way. And so how do you treat those who are the victims of something that's a collective issue? So I don't know. I'm just confused as to how we can be better at this. And I'm anxious to hear other things where maybe I'm going to see my county step up for our people that we feel for. So we're going to try to design a very energy efficient house anyway. So we're going to do it, but the client needs to know upfront for the insurance company, what's that going to cost? And it's not an easy thing. We're not just replacing a house because we don't even have drawings of the old house that we did 30 some years ago. So, and we want to design a house that makes sense in a new environment. It's a different place up there. And so we have to start from scratch. And then we've got to attach our energy premiums to that. So I won't go on, but that's just my own confusions right now.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, David. And I guess one thing I would ask you is, as you said, you've been doing this for decades here, and I'm just curious in the last 5-10 years, what has been your experience with helping people navigate, build smart in larger homes like this? What have you found an ability to determine what that extra cost is, or do you have any thoughts about that?
I'll let that for Sam, who's definitely the technical lead in our studio. But I will say that in the past, when we've done homes where people have lost them in the fires, to me, the most successful early thinking is build smaller than you had so that you can afford to put the premiums into the energy systems that'll take it to, in some cases, net zero. We've done net zero homes in rebuilds, but they started with smaller houses. But you can't insist that on everybody. But Sam, if you'd speak to, if we can put a premium, or what is the part of the energy costs, the energy saving costs to get to the HERS ratings in Boulder County that you can even throw out there?
Well, yeah, that would be being put on the spot,
yeah,
of course, but
we won't hold you to it, Sam. We're trying to just get some general thoughts, ideas. I mean, it's good feedback for the county as well.
Yeah, and it's not just energy. Just so you homeowners know that the other code things that have changed since your homes have been built also are adding incremental costs. But speaking of energy, really adding the photovoltaic panels and system to get the HERS further down, lower to where you have to go based on your size. A lot of that cost you get back as a tax credit. Now that number changes year by year. It's getting less and less. So we'd have to calculate that in too. But out of pocket, we usually see about a $30,000 number for a reasonable size photovoltaic system. Then the other things that we have to do to get a house to a lower HERS score envelope wise than say a house that was built in Weld County with their lower required energy code would be better or more insulation, and then better windows with better glass, and then better detailing on the envelope to keep the house tighter so it doesn't leak as much. I think those are kind of the main things we have to go after. And that, depending, your window package can be between $40,000 and $100,000, just depending on how much glass you want to have in your house. So the upcharge from regular double pane windows with a basic low E to a really good window, that could be an extra $15,000 to $25,000 on your window package, just depending on how many you have. The insulation price, plan to probably have more, around $10,000 more in your insulation number, just off the top of my head, and then probably around 10,000 more in effort to really tighten up the house. It's really up to the builder to keep all his subcontractors from drilling holes through the house everywhere and sealing them back up. But everybody has a role to play in getting the house to be energy efficient. I think other things that are not energy related, that are code related, I'm not sure if everybody out there had fire protection, fire sprinklers in their house. If they didn't, that's something that's going to be required now, just as the codes have changed. And then the structural requirements for, some of it is snow load, but more of it is wind load. It just, the building codes throughout the country have gotten much stricter on how strong your building has to be to withstand wind, things like that. So you're going to be putting more money into your construction just to withstand storms and big snowstorms or big windstorms. So overall, yeah, to throw out a percentage of your cost of construction to get from what code was when your homes were built to get to where you are now, that's a really hard thing to say. I would be curious to see what the insurance companies are saying just about the regular building codes. So that would take care of structure and plumbing codes, electrical requirements. They probably already have a percentage. So round the barn, but that's the things we're facing code wise. What I'm really hoping to see.
If I could interject that.
Okay.
For my question, thanks, Sam and David. Really appreciate it. Not being a construction guy or ever having to rebuild a file, but being a business guy and a math guy, on a 3,500 square foot house, which is about what we're looking to do, that could be in the $20 to $25 per square foot range. So that's kind of what we're looking at, because we have replacement cost insurance, and we need to come up with, and we'd appreciate it if the county would support us if we needed this, because that's where the regulations are coming from, that we need to be able to argue that above and beyond creating the fit and finish to replace the home that we had, which are higher end homes, we have this amount of X, maybe $20, $25, $30, $40, $50 per square foot that are required by code. And that's the kind of argument that we're about all to go into. In fact, we're going to be the leaders in that. We're already starting that with our adjuster. So that's the kind of tangible things that David is talking about, that we would really appreciate the county's help and support while we're going to battle with our insurance companies to get a fair replacement cost based on codes that are required, that, as David said, unofficially, we agree with trying to be energy efficient regardless of the economics. But we need to rebuild our homes and get as much as possible from the insurance company to do that.
I would just say that I regularly have conversations with insurance adjusters, not necessarily from houses that burned down in fires, although I have had some of those, but just for all sorts of insurance claims. because they do push back. Homeowners make claims that we're being required to do this, and I do have those conversations with the insurance company. So I'm more than happy to have those conversations with those companies and explain to them what the minimum code requirements are.
We appreciate that. We'd like to have the county and on our team, as David is saying, in our first battle of rebuilding, which is getting a fair replacement cost from the insurance company.
Yeah, happy to help.
Thank you.
Charlie, go ahead. You have a question? Anyone else? Any thoughts about what David Barrett brought up? Dale, Ron, Kim?
My first thought about that was, the solution that economists have been talking about for I don't know, 15, 20 years now is the idea of a carbon tax. The idea that, you're, putting the costs and charging the costs for these consequences of climate change with the consumption of fuels that create these emissions. I mean, that's something that was my first thought when, there should be a fund to help people manage the consequences of climate change. It's like, well, yeah, I guess fundamentally I agree. I know that's been talked about by the commissioners for quite some time. It's kind of a tall order to bring it into reality. But I think, big picture, I think, what we see is that our climate is changing in ways where we should anticipate more of these large fire events. And, this is not the first time, nor will it be the last that we're having this kind of a conversation.
I think one thing I would add is that, one of the reasons we wanted to start with Build Smart is because we do see our role in helping you as really providing the information and giving you what you need to help navigate the process. So, that may not be financial, it may not be us providing, grant money or assistance to monetarily help rebuild your home, but we're certainly committed to supporting you with the discussions that you have with your insurance companies and making sure that you understand the Build Smart requirements, because we felt like that might drive some of your design when you're rebuilding instead of rebuilding the exact same thing. And in really trying to streamline the planning process that's required prior to you getting your permits. So I don't know if this is a good time to transition into talking about the pause, but one of the things that we've done similar to after other events, and unfortunately in Boulder County, we have experienced several. So we've had, the 4 Mile fire, we've had the Cold Springs fire, we had the 2013 flood, which included, not just homes getting damaged by water, but being completely wiped out by mudslides and landslides and other things. And so we understand that it's a challenging and emotional, and it's a road that involves an investment of time to get your lives back in order. And we do have the experience of really partnering with folks in the community to try to make that as easy as we can. So one of the things that we've done is put a pause in place. Our normal kind of procedures for rebuilding are to have site plan review, which is the planning process prior to getting your building permit, and then your building permit, which involves all of the things that Ron detailed. Rather than requiring our typical site plan review process, what we want to do is just have a very simple, focused, streamlined process that would assist you in kind of doing the minor modifications that you may want to make to your home. Like, do you want to change your roof line? If PV is required as part of your home, we won't require a separate process for that, but we would include it and wrap it into this planning review process. It would look at, the geologic issues and longer term wildfire mitigation. So what we've been brainstorming on now is how do we package that into an approach that makes things very simple for you to get through to your building permit, so you can then move on with the building permit requirements. And so that is one of the ways that isn't a check, but is one way that we do see ourselves helping you. I do want to emphasize what Ron said about being available for questions too. So these forums are great to get kind of information out to a large group of people, and we understand that it'll be recorded for folks that weren't able to make it. But we know not everyone is on the same schedule, and working remotely during COVID just adds a whole new element of complexity to scheduling and everything. So we encourage you to talk to us individually. Both Hannah Hipley, Dale also is available. We'd love to talk to you about what you're thinking, so that we can try to address those things and really make it simple for you to move forward. So as our effort, as we're going through this effort to design this simplified approach for you, the idea is that we would develop a new set of regulations that would replace site plan review. So it would just be these provisions that you would be subject to, not site plan review for rebuilding. We'll take those to Planning Commission in February, and then to the Board of County Commissioners right afterwards. Any code change requires that it gets approval by both the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. And then you'd have a set of simpler rules to abide by in order to go forward with your building permit. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And we look forward to discussing the kinds of things and flexibilities that you might need in that planning process. I mean, I know Sam, David, and David are all very familiar with site plan review. We don't think that all of that evaluation is necessary for here. And so we're really just trying to focus in on the relevant things that we need to look at in order to build safely for the Calwood fire area. And I'll leave it.
Bob and Lori had a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. One of the things, all of our houses had a lot of windows, and I think that was something we all enjoyed with the views. And I've heard that they've changed regulations and you're only allowed 17% or something like that of your house to be windows. So given that if we use the triple pane higher E glass, better windows, will we be able to, have a structure similar to what we lost in the views in class?
So the limit on glazing is just has to do with using what's called the prescriptive pathway. So that's something that for houses less than 3,500 square feet, there is a prescriptive pathway that you can use to meet your code. But once you're using a HERS rating, which is everything over 3,500 square feet, once you're in the HERS rating pathway, there's no limitation on glazing area. It just means, so the glazing limitation just means that if you're wanting to use more than 18%, you have to use the performance standard. You can't use the prescriptive standard anymore. So for any size home, you could theoretically make an all glass house, theoretically.
Well, and from a planning perspective, I think what we're looking at are sort of the visibility impacts of it. So, looking from Foothills Highway, what is the presentation of this house going to be? But we know this area is very exposed now. So we're not trying to, the intent is not to rob people of any views that you may want to create for yourselves, but really just to try to mitigate any visual impacts best we can. So it's helpful to know that you're interested in still, having those kinds of windows. That's a consideration that we can factor in to, looking at the planning review part of this.
Good. It's funny that no one took that in, the visual impact when they built all those houses that obliterated the view of the Flatirons right there where 26 and Broadway come together.
I'm not sure which properties you're talking about exactly. I mean, there's a difference between what gets built in the city and what gets built in unincorporated Boulder County, and also sort of varying rules over time. But it is something
David
that
Barrett, you had a question?
Well, it was mainly, thanks, Gary. It was mainly to, Kim pretty much answered it, I think, is that I think the question might have been more related to visibility issues with planning than with energy. And they are both related. So I appreciate Ron's point there. And to your point, Ron, on that is that the houses that you were describing that Habitat has done and that have been net zero and cost very little in additional money, it's a different typology. You're talking about houses in more density with small windows. And now these are by nature, homes out in nature that are wanting to allow both light in and view out. I mean, there's reasons these people are up there and why people are in the city, that they're both valid. So they're different. So it's a bigger challenge to hit the energy standards with these kind of homes. And but that's just the nature of the problem. Kim's point, I think that was the one I was wondering about though, is that the visibility up there has changed with the loss of the tree cover. And so, and yet people are still gonna wanna have glass. And so now there are some glazing options that I think we can also, that are less emitting of light at night. So I think there are technical things, but then they'll have a cost. So it's just, that's where we're gonna be. But I think you both answered that question real helpful to me, at least.
So I want to we have 7 minutes left. Sue, Rob, Brian, Mr. Fowler, Kolbs, Jack, any further questions, comments, thoughts?
Yes, Sue has a question and I have one too.
I'm just wondering, Kim, as you're trying to streamline this process for us, what does that look like in terms of a time frame for us? You know, if site review usually takes this amount of time, but your new streamline regulations for us, what will the difference be? What will it look like?
You know, right now we don't have a timeline around it, but it would, I think hearing from you about, you know, as what is desirable for you or what helps make it, and then us thinking of how much time we need to actually, you know, do a site visit, look at your plans, produce an outcome. Those are all helpful things. I don't know that we'll have a codified timeline like we do in site plan review, where it's a 4-week, 2-week appeal call-up period. What we've done in other instances, looking at the 2013 flood, for instance, is we didn't put a timeline around it. We just said, we're going to work with the property owner and get this done as quickly as we can. Sometimes that was, you know, a week. And sometimes in more difficult situations where there were, you know, more complex issues to address, it took longer. But I think the hope is the intent is to get you through as quickly as we can, you know, and not have this set time frame. It would be a different process in site plan review. I don't see us having that kind of appeal call up, you know, piece of it, which is a 2-week mandatory piece, but it's really just looking at what we have to, moving you on to the next phase.
Yeah, and that's the kind of question I had too, following on with Sue. It gets back to what's important to us, and I think that's important for everyone to understand when you lose a home like this and you're rebuilding, not out of choice, but, you know, out of necessity, that getting your life back together as soon as possible is very important. Don't want months and months of delay. And so what Sue's asking is, you know, on a timetable, what would have been the normal process in terms of averages, and how do we put that in time? Because we want to get our brilliant architects going and our, you know, and our contractors scheduled, and we want to fast track this. So we want to put an overall time schedule together, is what Sue's asking about. And so what is the difference in what that would have been as an order of magnitude versus what it is now? And how can you help us put a schedule in time that we are at the starting construction phase, you know, as soon as possible? That's the nature of the question. And that's what David said at the beginning, is what you can do for us as a county, is you can answer that question and shorten that time frame and minimize the amount of cost and stress and hassle that we have to go through that time.
And that is the intent. I appreciate those comments. That is what we will be trying to do. So I think I don't have specifics for you. I will say we're planning on it being shorter than the typical process. If predictability around that scheduling is something that you think would be helpful, we can consider, creating a schedule that is more predictable. It just, for some, like I said, it may be shorter than others. So, we're just trying to get through it as quickly as we can.
So, when we ask questions, we're not always asking for something that you're saying you can't predict within a day or a week. We're looking for a range difference. What is this process going to be on average versus what it was? What are the steps? When can we get involved? How can we fast track that?
Yeah, the new approach, I don't even want to call it regulations, really. What I'm thinking of it as is it's an approach to helping you get to your building permit phase. So that new approach will all be outlined in what we take to Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners and would replace site plan review. So what we can do is send around, if you looked at Article 19 of the Land Use Code, you'd see what we've done in the 4 Mile Fire and what we did in the 2013 flood. It's probably something similar to that in the sense of it's addressing rebuilding procedures after an event. But again, here we have a different set of issues, and in some senses, they're a lot simpler than they were in some of these other places. So we do expect it to be a pretty concise review process to get you as quickly onto the next phase as you can.
Okay, so that's X versus Y. It used to be 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 30 weeks versus now it's going to be a range of what?
And then again, we are just developing this now, so I don't have numbers to give you, but I think your comments are something that we can consider about understanding that people want this as short as we can make it. So, we'll consider that as we're developing this. We're just, the pause is in place for us to do the work to come up with this approach so we can take it forward in mid-February and have something, as soon as possible. I do want to assure other people that if anyone's ready to go right this second, you don't have to wait until the pause. The pause is going to help you. We think it's going to be faster, quicker, easier. But if somebody is ready to go forward right this second, you could go through site plan review to do that. It's just, we think that some of that stuff is probably going to be unnecessary for rebuilding in this area. So we're just really trying to hone in on what we need to look at.
Right, and my experience right now with the county is on another project for site plan review is the earliest pre-app meeting I can get is middle of March. So, we're certainly going to be faster going with what we find out in mid-February. But I'd sure love to see a draft of that.
Off of that normal track. So there won't be, if there's a pre-app, if there needs to be a pre-app, it's going to be with Hannah, myself, or other staff that we will make accommodations to meet with people earlier than our normal schedule. So these are off the track of anything that's on our submittal schedule. So okay. we do plan on prioritizing these projects as people are ready to go through.
Okay.
So I just need to call time on us because I want to respect everyone's schedule and just thank everybody and say this is recorded. We'll post it. We're going to put out a questionnaire to get a better idea, like what some of these needs and desires you've expressed today from the broader group. So we can start including that in this approach, the new approach we're taking. Don't hesitate to reach out to Ron, to Hannah and Kim. You have that, all their contact information is on the website. To start this conversation, sooner the better. Don't wait, as you saw that one graphic, don't wait until Mr. Barrett has already designed it. And I'm not kidding, but he knows this stuff back and forth. But start those questions early on, and we're here to support you and work together on this. So please don't hesitate to ask these great questions. So thank you for your time, and we'll just stay in touch. So appreciate it. Thanks. Have a good day.